My ex thought he could humiliate me by bringing his new girlfriend to the town gala. So I did the only logical thing. I showed up on the arm of his biggest rival, the most dangerous billionaire in the valley. It was supposed to be a fake setup for revenge. Until he looked at me and whispered, "I want him to see you looking at me the way you used to look at him." He's bringing her, Pamela. He's actually bringing her to the Founders Gala. My best friend's voice over the phone felt like a physical blow. I stood in my small kitchen, staring at a half-eaten carton of yogurt, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal. Mason, my ex of 5 years, the man who promised me a ring and a forever, was bringing his new 20-something yoga instructor to the biggest event in town. It had been 3 months since he walked out, claiming he needed to find himself. And apparently, he found himself in the arms of someone who didn't have a single gray hair or a student loan. "I can't go, Sarah," I whispered, leaning against the counter. "I'll just be the pathetic ex-girlfriend watching them sip champagne. I can't do it." "You aren't going as the pathetic ex," Sarah hissed. "You're going with a distraction, a big, tall, incredibly handsome distraction." "And who exactly is going to volunteer for that suicide mission?" "Justin Blackwood," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial level. I nearly choked. Justin Blackwood was the town's most eligible bachelor, a man who owned half the real estate in the valley and hadn't been seen with a woman since he moved back from the city 2 years ago. He was private, intimidating, and looked like he'd been carved out of granite and bad intentions. He was also Mason's biggest rival in the business world. "He doesn't even know I exist," I argued. "Actually," Sarah chuckled, "he's been trying to buy Mason's office building for 6 months and Mason is blocking him. Justin needs leverage. You need revenge. It's a match made in petty heaven." I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. I was tired of being the girl who got left behind. I was tired of crying over a man who had moved on before the sheets were even cold. "Fine," I said, my heart starting to race. "How do I get a meeting with a ghost?" Justin Blackwood's office didn't look like a place where dreams went to die. It looked like a place where they were methodically disassembled and sold for parts. It was all glass, steel, and a view of the town that made everyone else look like ants. Justin sat behind a desk that probably cost more than my car, his dark eyes tracking me as I walked in. He didn't stand up. He just watched. "Pamela Miller," he said, his voice a deep, resonant rumble that felt like a vibration in my chest. "You're 10 minutes early. I like that." "I'm not here for a job, Mr. Blackwood," I said, sitting down before he could invite me. I needed to look confident even if my knees were shaking. "I'm here for a partnership." He leaned back, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. He knew exactly who I was. He knew I was the woman Mason had dumped. "You want to make him suffer," Justin stated plainly. "And you think being seen on my arm is the fastest way to do it." "Mason is obsessed with his image," I explained, leaning forward. "He thinks he's the king of this town. Seeing me with the man who is currently outmaneuvering him in every business deal. It will kill him. And in exchange, I can give you the details on the zoning issues he's hiding regarding the East End project. I handled his filing for years. I know where the bodies are buried." Justin tapped a silver pen against the desk. The silence stretched until I wanted to scream. Finally, he stood up, walking around the desk. He was taller than I imagined, filling the room with an overwhelming masculine energy. He stopped just inches from me, the scent of expensive leather and cedarwood hitting me like a wave. "I don't just want to be seen with you, Pamela," he whispered, his eyes dropping to my lips. "If we do this, we do it right. We aren't just dating. We are obsessed with each other. I want him to see you looking at me the way you used to look at him. Can you handle that?" I swallowed hard, looking up into those dark, intense eyes. "I can handle anything to see him crawl." "Good," Justin said, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His touch was electric, a jolt of heat that made my breath hitch. "The gala is in 3 days. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something that makes him regret every choice he's ever made." The dress was a mistake, or maybe it was a masterpiece. It was a deep, midnight blue silk that clung to every curve and dipped dangerously low in the back. When Justin arrived at my door, he didn't say a word. He just stared at me for a long, quiet minute, his jaw tightening. "You look," he started, then shook his head. "We're going to cause a riot." He offered his arm, and as we stepped into the ballroom of the Founders' Gala, the music seemed to falter. The town of Oak Creek wasn't used to scandals, and the sight of the reclusive Justin Blackwood with the heartbroken Pamela Miller was the equivalent of a nuclear blast. I felt every eye in the room on us, but I kept my chin up, leaning into Justin's side. "There he is," Justin whispered, his breath warm against my ear. I looked across the room. Mason was standing by the buffet, a blonde woman practically draped over his arm. He was laughing at something someone said, looking perfectly at ease, until he saw us. The glass in his hand actually shook. His laughter died instantly, his eyes bugging out as he tracked our movement toward the center of the dance floor. "Don't look at him," Justin commanded softly, his hand firm on my waist. "Look at me. Remember the deal. You're obsessed with me." Justin pulled me into his arms as a slow song began. I had never danced like this with Mason. Mason always kept a polite distance, mindful of his suit. But Justin held me like he was afraid I might fly away, his hand splayed across the small of my back, drawing me flush against his hard chest. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it. "You're shaking," Justin murmured, his dark eyes locked on mine. It's a lot of pressure," I lied. The truth was, I wasn't thinking about Mason anymore. I was thinking about the way Justin's thumb was tracing small circles on my hip. I was thinking about the heat radiating from his body. Suddenly, Mason was there, interrupting us. "Pamela, what the hell is this?" Justin didn't let go of me. He just turned his head slightly, giving Mason a look of utter boredom. "It's a dance, Mason. I assume you've seen one before." "She's with me," Mason spat, reaching for my arm. Justin stepped in front of me, his posture shifting into something truly dangerous. "She was with you. Now she's with me. And if you touch her again, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation." The look in Justin's eyes made Mason flinch. He backed away, stumbling over his own feet, while the blonde woman looked on in embarrassment. I should have felt triumphant, but as I looked back at Justin, I realized I was in much deeper water than I'd planned. The drive home was silent, but it wasn't the awkward silence of strangers. It was the heavy, charged silence of two people who had just played a role a little too convincingly. Justin's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white. I looked out the window at the passing trees, my mind a mess of conflicting emotions. "He was furious," I said, trying to break the tension. "You were right, the look on his face when you stepped in front of me. It was perfect." "Is that what you want?" Justin asked, his voice rough. "To see him angry, or do you want him back?" I turned to look at him. The dashboard lights cast sharp shadows across his face, making him look even more like a hero from a dark novel. "I don't want him back, Justin. I think I realized that the moment we walked into the room. I didn't feel sad when I saw him with her. I just felt annoyed that I wasted 5 years on someone so small." Justin pulled the car over to the side of the road, the engine idling in the quiet night. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "The deal was for the gala, Pamela. We showed him. You gave me the zoning info. We're done." My heart sank. I didn't want to be done. I wanted more of that feeling, the way he looked at me, the way he held me. "Right," I whispered. "We're done." "But," Justin continued, his voice dropping an octave, "I find that I'm not very good at letting go of things that belong to me, even if it was just for a night." He reached across the console, his hand cupping my cheek. The heat of his palm was staggering. I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering shut. "Justin." "Tell me to stop, Pamela," he groaned, his face inches from mine. "Tell me this is just about the revenge, and I'll drive you home and never call you again." "It's not about the revenge," I breathed. He didn't hesitate. He leaned in and captured my lips in a kiss that was anything but fake. It was desperate, possessive, and tasted like a long-suppressed hunger. My hands found his hair, pulling him closer as the world outside the car disappeared. We weren't playing a game anymore. The Bachelor had caught the gardener, and neither of us wanted to be rescued. We spent the next week in a blur of secret meetings and late-night phone calls. On the surface, we were still dadding to keep the town talking, but behind closed doors, it was becoming something much more terrifying. I found myself at his house more often than my own. Justin wasn't the cold, heartless businessman everyone thought he was. He was a man who liked old jazz records, who cooked a mean steak, and who listened, really listened, when I talked about my dreams for the garden. "You're starring again," Justin said, looking up from his laptop. We were in his living room, the fire crackling in the hearth. I was curled up on the sofa with a book I hadn't turned a page of in 20 minutes. "I'm just trying to figure you out," I admitted. "Why did you agree to this, Justin? You don't need zoning info that badly. You could have bought that building 10 different ways." He closed his laptop and walked over, sitting on the edge of the sofa. He took my hand, tracing the lines on my palm. "I've been watching you for a year, Pamela. Every morning when you walked past my office on your way to the garden, I saw the way he treated you, like you were an accessory to his life. I hated him for it long before he blocked my project." My breath hitched. "You were watching me." "I wanted to say something 100 times, he whispered. "But you were happy, or you thought you were, when Sarah called me and told me about your plan. I didn't care about the revenge. I just wanted a reason to finally talk to you." The honesty in his voice was overwhelming. I reached out, my fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. "Justin, The moment was shattered by a loud banging at the front door. Justin cursed under his breath and went to answer it. I followed him into the foyer, my heart sinking as I saw Mason standing on the porch, looking disheveled and drunk. "I know what you're doing," Mason yelled, swaying on his feet. "You think you can just take her. You think you can just use her to get to me. Pamela, he's lying to you. He's only with you because of the East End project." I looked at Justin, expecting him to deny it, but he just stood there, his face unreadable. The old doubts started to creep in. Was this all just a long game? Was I just a pawn in a billionaire's chess match? Mason pointed a finger at me, his eyes red. "He's a shark, Pamela. He's going to eat you alive and spit out the bones." "Get out, Mason," Justin said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Now." Mason spat on the porch and stumbled back to his car, leaving a trail of bitterness in his wake. Justin shut the door and leaned against it, his eyes closed. The silence in the foyer was deafening. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. "Is it true?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Did you only do this for the project?" Justin opened his eyes. He looked tired, not the tired of work, but the tired of a man who had been fighting himself for a long time. In the beginning, maybe the project was a good excuse. It made it feel safe. It made it feel like a business transaction instead of this. He stepped toward me, his presence filling the space between us. "But I don't care about the building anymore, Pamela. I'd burn the whole town down if it meant I could keep you." "Then show me," I whispered. "Stop talking about contracts and projects and show me what's real." He didn't need to be told twice. He swept me up in his arms and carried me to his bedroom, a space that felt like a sanctuary. When he laid me down on the silk sheets, the world outside, Mason, the town, the gossip, simply ceased to exist. Making love to Justin was an act of total surrender. It wasn't the polite, routine intimacy I'd known with Mason. It was a storm. It was his hands memorizing every inch of my skin, his voice whispering my name like a prayer against my neck. It was a deep, emotional connection that left me breathless and raw. In the quiet aftermath, as we lay tangled together in the dark, I realized that I hadn't just made Mason jealous. I had found the man who was actually meant to hold my heart. But as I watched the moonlight dance on the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mason wasn't finished with us yet. The next morning, I arrived at the community garden to find a massive bouquet of lilies, my father's favorite flowers, sitting on the bench. There was a card tucked inside. "I made a mistake. Let's talk. I have something you need to see. M." I wanted to throw them in the trash, but the "something you need to see" part nagged at me. I met Mason at a small cafe on the edge of town, far from prying eyes. He looked better than he had the night before, sober but desperate. "Pamela, please just listen," he said, pushing a manila envelope across the table. "I know you think Justin is the hero here, but look at the dates on these documents." I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of Justin's internal memos from 6 months ago. They detailed a plan to acquire the land the community garden sat on. Justin hadn't just been watching me. He had been planning to turn the garden, my father's legacy, into a parking garage for his new development. "He's playing you," Mason whispered. "He knew if he got close to you, he could convince you to sell. He's using your emotions to get the one piece of land I wouldn't let him touch." I felt the blood drain from my face. The obsessed looks, the jazz records, the night we just shared, was it all part of a demolition plan? I looked at the documents, the cold, hard numbers staring back at me. Justin Blackwood, the man I was starting to love, was the very person trying to destroy the only thing I had left of my father. "Why are you showing me this, Mason?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Why do you care?" "Because despite everything, I still love you," he lied. I could see the calculation in his eyes. He didn't love me, he just hated losing to Justin. But that didn't change the fact that the papers in my hand were real. I stood up, the envelope clutched in my shaking hand. I didn't say a word as I walked out, the taste of betrayal bitter in my mouth. I had tried to make an ex jealous, and instead I had handed my heart to a predator. I didn't call, I didn't text. I walked straight into Justin's office, past his protesting secretary, and slammed the envelope onto his desk. He looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to a cold, sinking realization as he saw the memos. "Explain this," I demanded, my voice cracking. "Tell me you didn't plan to pave over my father's garden while you were whispering my name in the dark." Justin stood up, his face ashen. He didn't look like the confident billionaire anymore. He looked like a man who had been caught in a lie he forgot he told. "Pamela, those memos are old. They were drafted by my acquisition team before I ever spoke to you." "But you didn't stop them," I hissed. "You let them continue the research. You let me believe you cared about my dreams while you were literally planning their destruction." "I was going to tell you," he said, stepping around the desk. "I was looking for a way to move the project, to find a different lot, but the board." "The board?" I laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "You own the company, Justin. You are the board. Don't hide behind corporate jargon. You used me. You used my grief and my anger at Mason to get what you wanted. You're no better than him. In fact, you're worse because you made me believe you were different." "Pamela, please." He reached for my hand, but I flinched away. "Stay away from me," I said, backing toward the door. "The dating is over. The partnership is over. And if you ever come near that garden again, I'll make sure the whole town knows exactly what kind of man you are." I ran out of the building, the air outside feeling cold and thin. I had played the game to win, but I had lost everything that actually mattered. The next 2 weeks were the loneliest of my life. I threw myself into the garden, digging, planting, and weeding until my hands were raw and my back ached. Mason tried to call, tried to check in, but I blocked him. I didn't want the man who betrayed me or the man who used me. I just wanted my peace back. But peace didn't come. Every time I saw a black SUV, my heart jumped. Every time I heard a jazz song on the radio, I had to turn it off. I missed him. I missed the way he looked at me before I knew about the memos. I missed the man I thought he was. Then, one morning, I arrived at the garden to find a group of men in suits standing near the entrance. My heart hammered. Was this it? Was the demolition starting? I marched up to them, ready for a fight. "I told you to stay away from here," I yelled. One of the men stepped forward, holding a legal document. "Miss Miller, we're not here to demolish anything. We're here to deliver this." I took the paper. It wasn't an eviction notice. It was a deed of trust. Justin Blackwood had purchased the land the garden sat on and placed it into a permanent, protected land trust in my name. It could never be built on, never be sold, and never be destroyed. It was a gift, a multi-million-dollar piece of real estate given away to ensure my father's legacy lived forever. Tucked into the back of the folder was a handwritten note. "I was a shark, Pamela. You were right. But you taught me how to be a man again. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I couldn't let my past mistakes hurt your future. The garden is yours, always. Justin." I sat down on the bench, the tears finally coming. He hadn't just saved the garden. He had given up the very thing he'd been fighting for just to prove he loved me. I looked at the deed, and then I looked toward the glass tower on the hill. I had tried to make someone jealous, but I had ended up finding a love that was willing to sacrifice everything. I found him on the balcony of his penthouse, looking out over the town as the sun began to set. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders slumped, his usual armor gone. He heard the door open but didn't turn around. "The trust is legal, Pamela," he said, his voice weary. "You don't have to see me or talk to me to keep the land. It's yours." "I know," I said, walking up to stand beside him. He turned then, his eyes wide with shock. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to talk about a new contract," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "No zoning info, no revenge plots, no fake dates." Justin stepped toward me, hope warring with doubt on his face. "What kind of contract?" "A real one," I whispered, reaching out to take his hand. "One where we're honest about the sharks and the gardens. One where we don't use each other to get back at someone else." Justin pulled me into his arms, his grip so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry, Pamela. I almost lost you because I was too afraid to be the man you deserved." "We both made mistakes," I said, looking up at him. "I used you too, remember, but the feelings, they were never fake, not for a second." Justin leaned down and kissed me, a slow, deep promise of a future that didn't need blueprints or board meetings. In the distance, I could see the lights of the town, and somewhere down there, Mason was probably still trying to find himself. But I didn't care. I had found the most eligible bachelor in town, and it turned out. He wasn't looking for a business partner. He was just looking for a home. And as we stood there in the twilight, I knew that our story was finally starting for real.